Welcome to WWW
Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Andy, or WWW and thank you so much for joining me in another episode of Game Speculation. We're once again going back to The Legend of Zelda. We have a lot to talk about this game, and this time a very interesting topic indeed. Maybe some of you have heard this before, but have you thought more about it than just the look of it? Now the theory goes like this. Skyloft and City in the Sky is in fact the same location, the same island, the same home. Well, kind of. So why this theory brought up? Well, both of them are cities floating in the heavens. And you don't really need much more than that to start to speculate if these two places maybe have some kind of connection. And indeed, you don't really need anything more, but we are digging deeper than so. I started to look up theories by other people around the internet, and I found some very interesting coincidences. Or are they coincidences? So Skyloft is a location in Skyward Sword. It's basically the main island where you and many other Skyloftians live in peace, basically. Keep in mind that Skyward Sword is the first game in the Zelda timeline, at least so far. And Twilight Princess takes place a good while afterwards. It basically takes place after both Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. So as you can see, there's a bit of space between these two games, so a lot can happen between these two games that we don't really know about. So Skyloft is a really peaceful place. People live there in peace, and it's basically the ones that have a good connection to the gods. And that island was risen by the god Hylia after she fought against the Demise, the Demon King. Or I guess, the origin of Ganondorf. However, City in the Sky is something completely different. The music tells you that this place is really screwed up. The buildings are a lot taller, there are small bird-like people called Uka living there. Walls are destroyed, the floor is falling down below your feet. And yeah, the place is pretty dangerous, mysterious, and, as I said, screwed up. But what clues do we really have except for them looking kind of similar to each other? Well, one would assume that maybe the Skyloftians would still live in Skyloft, or aka City in the Sky, at the time of Twilight Princess as well, but this is in fact not the case. At the end of Skyward Sword, we got to know that Zelda and Link, along with other Skyloftians, went down to the surface to start a new land there, which later would become Hyrule. But when they did that, what happened to Skyloft? Was it abandoned? Or what really happened to that place? Well, there is in fact a theory that the Loftwings, being the big birds that appear in Skyward Sword that will help out the humans, that they actually evolved, or rather devolved, into what we know as the Okua. Or Okua, however you pronounce it. The reason for this is because the Okua, I'm not gonna bother with the pronunciation, alright? That's because the Okua also have wings, so they are kind of like bird-like people. The only problem, of course, is that the Okuas can talk, and the Loftwings cannot. Another theory is that instead of the Okuas being human-like birds, they are instead bird-like humans. That the people who remained at Skyloft when the others went down to create Hyrule, basically, they evolved, or devolved, eventually over time, into these Okuas. Because remember, as I said, there's a long period between Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess, and between those two we don't really get to know much about what happens in Skyloft. For all we know, they could have had a limited supply of food and water, and therefore evolved into fitting the surroundings, the environment. But there are in fact two games between these two games that do have a connection to the sky, and islands or homes in the sky. These games taking actually place right after Skyward Sword, or maybe not right after, but at least the next games in the timeline. These being the Minish Cap and Four Swords. In the Minish Cap there's a castle or a temple called the Palace of Winds, which takes place in the sky on the cloud tops. But does that have any connection to the Skyloft or the City in the Sky at all? Anyways, in Twilight Princess there's a huge clue that the Skyloftians, or the people living at Skyloft, are in fact the ones that went down to the surface and built up Hyrule. In Twilight Princess, a character named Shad said the following. But also, according to legend, long ago there was a race even closer to the gods, and some said these creatures made the Hylians. When they created the people of Hylia, they simultaneously created a new capital, a city that floated in the heavens. They dwelt there, and some scholars believe that the race still lives there, somewhere in the great sky. Now obviously we have already learned, and we learned it even more here, that the people of Skyloft were the ones that went down to the surface, and created Hylia, or Hyrule, or the Hylia people. But according to this, it says that some of them still lives up there, which even further supports the theory of the people of Skyloft eventually evolving or de-evolving into these Okuas. So if we assume this theory of what we have said so far is correct, then let me summarize a bit of what we have so far. The Skyloftians, or the people living at Skyloft, after Link defeated the mice, they returned, or at least many of them returned to the surface or went to the surface to start a new land there, which would eventually become Hyrule, and that was the beginning of the Hylian people. But some people still remained in Skyloft, and eventually, over time, all the way over to Twilight Princess when we get there, the people that lived there would evolve into the Okas, which still had a strong connection to the gods. And they recreated or they redesigned the whole Skyloft to make it fit better with how they were looking right now, being these little bird-like people, right? Which would be City in the Sky, the temple, from Twilight Princess. But it doesn't end there. There's still more connections to it. In Twilight Princess, in the Temple of Time, you get an item called the Dominion Rod. This rod is confirmed in-game to be created by the Okas, aka the people of Skyloft, or what remains of them at least. So since they created the Dominion Rod, it is also easy to think that they created the Temple of Time, right? But it is confirmed in Hyrule Historia that the one who created the Temple of Time is in fact the 7th or at least one of the sages, called Rauru. At least the Sage of Light. You know, this guy. You remember him from Ocarina of Time, right? He created the Temple of Time, but it may very well be that, you know, he got help from the Okuas, that the Okuas took part in the building of the Temple of Time, right? And therefore the Dominion Rod is located there. But the thing is, if you look at Rauru here, and we look at Gapora, being the father of Zelda in Skyward Sword, don't they look a bit similar to each other, don't you think? Well, the thing is, it is believed that this Gapora was the actual one that built the Temple of Time, and that his descendant is actually Rauru, who would continue to build the temple after Rauru eventually maybe died or maybe evolved into Okua himself. This means that the guy who created the Temple of Time is in fact a Skyloftian. Yeah, this sounds all a bit confusing, but trust me, if you look at the big picture, it's not very confusing. So basically, it is believed that Rauru and Gapora is actually the same person, or not same person, but maybe have the same bloodline. This means that Gapora was actually one who built the Temple of Time, or at least started on it. And since he's a Skyloftian, this may be the reason the Okuas are so really desperate in getting the Dominion Rod back or finding it. And then look at the item, the Claw Shot. Now you might think, why does that have some connections between these two places? Now the Claw Shot is important to get to like the very tallest places, I guess, in Skyloft. To get to all places in Skyloft you need a Claw Shot. And this is also the case in City in the Sky. And is it only a coincidence that you also find one of the Claw Shots in City in the Sky? Maybe, maybe not. But it all makes sense. I mean, in Skyward Sword you get 2 Claw Shots, right? And after some Skyloftians went to the surface while other remains, it is kind of logical that they decided to split this piece of goddess treasure in 2, letting one Claw Shot be in the surface and one being remaining in the sky. And this is actually the case in Twilight Princess, that you find one Claw Shot in the surface and the other one you find in the City in the Sky. It is also worth pointing out that you actually need a claw shot in order to get to the city in the sky in Twilight Princess, as you need to claw shot into that big cannon, you remember that, right? All in all, it seems like Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess have some very interesting connections with the cities in the sky. It seems like, according to this theory at least, or these theories combined, that the Skyloftians, or some of them, returned to the surface or went back to the surface to start a new life, start a new land, while the other ones remained at Skyloft, evolved into the Okuas, rebuilt the city in the sky, or rebuilt Skyloft into what we know in Twilight Princess. We know that the people who created the Hylian people, or created Hyrule, are the same people who came from the sky according to Shad in Twilight Princess. All of these connections lead to believing that Skyward Sword's Skyloft and Twilight Princess City in the Sky is in fact the very same location. But what are your thoughts on this, guys? I'd love to hear your theories and your thoughts around this topic. So make sure to drop a like rating and a comment in the below to tell me what you guys think about this, alright? And as I said, drop a like rating if you enjoyed this video, as it really helps me out. And subscribe to see more game speculation from me and other videos as well. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.